On the LEC topic, I'll tie it into what we were talking about now a little bit. Seal, which goes like this. So as Dom said, once upon a time, part of the reason Korea actually ruled League of Legends, in my opinion, is because the junglers were just ahead of everyone else. Like, the way they jungled was, they perfected it. Like, around Season 7, they had mastered how the jungle worked in the game. Whereas, obviously, as Dom says, the more things they changed and the more uncertainty they included, actually seemed to sort of fuck with how Koreans process the game, what their system would be, as it were. So I have a question for you, because along those lines, right, if you're someone who is interested in, like, poker game theory, and like how you like systems approach, what do you really think of your fucking jungler, mate? Because some of Malrang's fucking early game ganks last split, like, mate, if I was making a flow chart, these are some I would never attempt. Some of these are really ballsy. Like, if they work, yeah, it looks amazing, but if they don't, like, holy fuck. Go on.
I mean, some of them were for sure like intuitive, but I think a lot of it was, and I've actually held this close to my chest for a long time, but I haven't been able to like tweet it. You know, it's because I personally, and I said this in Rich's show as well, I think that a lot of European laners are boosted. Like, I think they're like really bad. So if you incorrectly manage
right there, OCE coach says EU players are bad. Boom.
No, but the thing is, like, if you look at junglers as well, that like the majority of Western junglers are herbivores. Like, they don't actually know. Like, they think that timing a camp 2:15, you do your Raptors at 2 minutes, you're back there 4:15 on the dot, you clear those Raptors, amazing. But what they don't understand is after a full clear, you have to wait at 2 minutes 15 seconds. And then if you're 2 levels up on the jungler and your champion, or the meta doesn't dictate, the meta doesn't give you a champion that can 1v9 games against, for example, other champions. So for example, like if you look at the Astralis game versus Rogue, right? It's very hard for Lulia to 1v9 that game. It's very, very hard. Right, in my opinion. So if you just full clear compared to other laners that can just side lane with TP or push lanes deep, and it overall just get more resources and scale better, and they're just better champions in the current meta, then these junglers can't actually carry. So I actually think that a lot of what Malrang was doing was abusing the fact that a lot of junglers were just herbivores. They weren't punishing bad lanes. They were playing for themselves when they really shouldn't be. Right, and also the fact that a lot of these laners were mismanaging their waves, finding bad base timing. So, I mean, can he full clear? Of course he can. Of course he can. But guys, it's not hard. It's really not hard. You just full clear down. You finish your 6 camps at 305 or whatever. You do your crab 315. You ward wave 4-5 to find the enemy jungle. You take another camp and then you base, or you stay one more clear if you want like a half item when you're playing something like Karthus, for example. Right? It's really not hard to full clear. Right? It's really not hard. It's more so that he sees a lane that should base. So I'll give that Kalista Renata an example. Okay, if Xanatam overstays in the lane in bot lane, right? Sorry, if Kalista Renata do not base around wave 4-5, even though they get pushed level 1 because they have control of the wave, no, if they don't base, then Xanatam will win because they'll just out sustain, right? So say you just mismanage a wave and you don't get pushed, right? Or say you take the wrong skill, as Lucian Nami versus Kalista Renata level 1, and you don't take W, you take Q. And you lose full control of the wave, and they can crash an extra wave and they get a better base or something like that. You just mess up something in the lane, it just completely ruins your game, and your position is completely different from where it should be, right? A lot of these situations are replicable, and what happens is Malrang just gets into a game, he says, oh, okay, this guy should be 70% HP and his wave should be at his tower, but he's now super overextended with 1 ward when I'm bot on this timer, and I know enemy jungle position. Why wouldn't he go? And I'm watching these Twitter analysts be like, oh, he's just a gank heavy style, blah, blah, blah. No, of course not. And also mathematically in solo queue and in regions that are, of course, like much more passive, maybe not so anymore because of the durability patch, but at least in spring, right? Catch up EXP is a thing, right? So the biggest value behind jungling back then was actually getting your laners ahead. It's still kind of the case. Right? Just because in the mid game, they're able to more efficiently and mathematically gather more resources than your jungler. That's just how it works, right? So where there's some questionable ganks for sure, right? Where there's some very questionable uses of turns, like tempo, and then he didn't base at the right time. Of course, he's a human being, he makes mistakes. But the reason we're winning games in a lot of cases, or the reason he's able to win these early games is because he's just a better player. I'm sorry, that's just the case. And the only person that I saw that was doing like basically the same thing, but no one was talking about was Jankos. And to me, that was insane. Like if you actually look at the way he plays, it's very similar, right? And so
yeah, I think the difference for me, at least watching both of those players, is that it felt like Jankos like had a lot more intention in terms of like when, you know, something like when a gank wasn't available, you know, like it felt like he wouldn't get lost, where at least I would see a lot of times where Malrang would just like start a Herald like 4 or 5 times in a row. And it's like, okay, like the Herald is not like, like your bot is not here yet. Like you need them to do it. And then he would just be like wasting a bunch of time. So I would say that that's like the reason why I had Jankos as the #1 jungler and Malrang as #2 in spring, was because I thought that in those, like when things went well, you know, both of them are getting kills. But I would think, but when everything didn't go according to plan, it felt like Jankos had more like knowledge about, you know, when a play was over, and he would just move on to the next thing, where it felt like Malrang would be like a lot of would be kind of sticky with some plays. You know, he would want the gank to get off, so he would like sit in a bush for like a little bit too long, or like the Herald thing or the Dragon thing. Like I felt like there was a couple times where he would go to an objective and just like leash it, get it to half-life, other jungler would come, force him off, he'd back off, then he'd start it again, and it was like, man,
I mean, for sure there were lots of like questionable things, for sure. But at the same time, I would argue that I think a lot of stuff that he does were also really creative. And in some, like in a lane centric draft, because I mean, do you agree that the draft is very, like the draft dictates how you play the game, basically at the highest level. With us, I think it puts a lot of pressure on Malrang, because he needs to be extremely creative and take less resources in a lot of cases, because we're very greedy with, well, I would not say as much anymore, but we're very greedy with like our lanes, because I think we have very good laners, and this just plays to our strengths. So we're also very good at negating these punishment windows, and it just means that Malrang has to be creative and move around the map and cover these timers as well. So I mean, like in one way, you could say that, you know, he's blundering a lot, but then if you actually look at his overall performance throughout the entire split, I think that he was a good league above a lot of the junglers in the league, and I think there weren't random ganks. I mean, for sure, the Herald thing and some things, they are legitimate points, but it wasn't as severe as people thought it was. And I mean, I
never was one of the people that said that he was bad. It was more like he was like not the best. He was like second best. You know, I mean, that's how, at least how I viewed it.
I mean, I remember coming in and people saying that we were going to come 6th. You know, but I looked at I remember looking at our first scrims, and we didn't play that. We played pretty bad, actually. I looked at the very first scrims, and in the first 2 days, I remember messaging our general manager, and I was like, okay, we're going to come top 3. I can just tell, like instantly, like how? Like you can just see. You can just see. You can see the potential. You can see what people do, and lo and behold, we did quite well, I think, right?
Want to see more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, you know, be a pleb and don't.